How does Marisa compare to Kinich and Mualani? So, Mualani is not a character that cheats very well. I talked about this yesterday, but if you're not doing like Omega cooked alternate 36-second rotations where you do one rotation with Xiangling Burst and one rotation with Sucrose Burst as your source of Pyro, if you do just normal like 20-second rotations on her, just in terms of DPS, she's pretty whatever. The thing is, she has a lot of advantages that don't show up in just a sheet that make it so that in practice for speedrunning, she's very, very powerful. Let's talk about some of those things, right? First, Mualani is a character who scales with HP, but has barely any sources of HP from gear or supports, right? Her weapon, like technically her free-to-play weapon is an HP 1, and I think Surf's Up gives a little bit of HP percent. I kind of forgot. I never remember the like stats that you get from, oops, wrong one. From these, 20% HP, but like, that's not a lot, right? 20% HP, not a lot. Most people don't use this. They generally use either Widsith or a 5-star weapon. Either Surf's Up or like Aida's Sig or some shit like that, right? So she gets at most 20% HP from her weapon. She is often not played with Hydro Resonance. And there's no supports that buff HP other than fucking like some constellation stuff. Because of that, HP is a really, really useful substat on her. Usually, when you look at attack scalers, they get a lot of attack because Bennett is broken as fuck. And on top of that, there's a lot of artifact sets that give you 20% attack. Or something that's equivalent to attack, right? You've got Noblesse, you've got TOM, and you've got Song of Days Past, which all provide either attack or something that in your damage formula does the same thing as attack. Yeah, you've got TTDS, you've got Chevaliers, right? There's so many sources of attack in the game. Power Resonance, obviously Bennett, Yansan soon. But when it comes to HP, there's pretty much just Hydro Resonance and some 5-star characters constellations. And that's kind of it. That's why HP Circlet is a viable thing on Mualani, right? Because if you don't have any external sources of HP or attack, HP or attack is a stat that's about as good as crit, if not better. What that means is that getting a Mualani build with, I don't know, let's say 30 useful substats, right? Versus getting an Arlecchino build with 30 useful substats. If you look at the average Arlecchino build with 30 useful substats, maybe you'll get like 22 crit rolls, 5 attack rolls, 3 EM rolls, right? Those 5 attack rolls are worth about half a crit roll each in terms of how much damage you get from them. Mualani, those 5 HP rolls are worth as much as crit is. So she's effectively getting 2.5 more substats worth of additional damage at the same amount of substats. Just because the substats other than crit are a lot more valuable on her than they are on characters like Arlecchino, characters like Malika. In other words, Mualani is a character who is kind of gimped by KQM standard. KQM standard always assumes the same amount of substats for your characters, right? It assumes 2 rolls into every single substat, and then as static rolls, and then past that you get, what is it? Is it 20? I think 20 liquid rolls that you can put into anything, right? Usually that's 18 in crit and 2 in like attack. The reason why it's not 20 in crit is because they're assuming that you can at most get 2 rolls on average per artifact of each stat. So you can get two crit rate rolls, 2 crit damage roll on the first 4 artifacts, but the last one can't get the crit stat that's on your main stat. So that's, instead of 20, right, 4 on each, it's 18. And then the remaining 2 will be an attack instead, right? But the thing is, for Mualani, if you do something like that, you're kind of limiting yourself. Because it's very possible that you have a circlet that looks like... I guess I don't have a lot of HP on my circlets, huh? Oh well. But it's very possible that you end up having... Sure, something that looks like this, right? On a character like Arlecchino, 3 crit rolls, 2, let's say it was attack for Arlecchino, and 2 EM rolls, right? That's 7 rolls, but the attack rolls are worth about half a crit roll, and assuming you have EM on your other pieces as well, so are the EM rolls. So these 4 non-crit rolls are the equivalent of 2 crit rolls. Which means that on Arlecchino, I wouldn't use this piece, because while it has 7 rolls, it has the equivalent of 5 crit rolls. So if I have a piece with 6 crit rolls, I'd use that instead. But on Mualani, I can use a piece like this, and it will be better than the 6 crit roll piece. But KQM Standard doesn't account for that. It doesn't account for the fact that on Mualani, you will end up using pieces that have less crit but more total stats, because they'll be better. And the more total good stats you have, the higher the likelihood of an artifact having more of those stats. Who cares about KQM in 2025? Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you, alright? KQM is not all that, like, relevant anymore. But KQM Standard and the impact of the work KQM did on the Theorycrafting community will be there forever. There is no way to make an artifact standard that is both relatively easy to understand and also very accurate to the farming experience. Because there's too much nuance to it, which means that you have to choose, do you make your standards so fucking convoluted that you're gonna need to have a fucking master's degree in statistics to understand how to use it properly? Or do you accept a little bit of a lower precision in your results and make it so that the standard is usable by pretty much everyone? And KQM Standard is useful, it's just that it's also nice to understand the limitations of it. In any case, the point I'm making here is not KQM Standard sucks, it's Mualani is a character whose damage gets underestimated by KQM Standard compared to other characters. What about increasing the number of substats you can allocate? You can do that. I think that if you want to look at Mualani, the best way to go about it is to have 2 less liquid subs, but 4 more fixed subs. 1 into HP, 1 into EM, 1 into crit rate, 1 into crit damage. I think that's the best way to go about trying to make a Mualani artifact standard that is accurate. But the thing is, that's for Mualani specifically because of the way that her damage gets upgraded by each stat. And that standard would have to be different for each unit. And then it's not a standard anymore, it's just a list of exceptions, you know? Mualani has, like, channeling levels of useful stats. No, she has more, but less, but more, but less, kind of. It's weird. Did KQM fall off, or are there too many people now? The biggest thing with KQM is a lot of the initial stat of KQM ended up leaving because, I mean, fuck, man, Genshin's been out for years at this point. People move on. And the more turnover there is in staff, the more or the less like interpersonal it feels and the more corporate it feels. I still think KQM is a very useful resource. I don't really look at the KQM Discord anymore, but I think that KQM being popular and like it being one of the first results you see when you try to look for builds is a good thing, because you'll get better answers to your questions asking in KQM Q&A chat than you would asking in a general chat on a random Discord from a content creator. The KQM website, especially the TCL, is still incredibly useful. I still cross-reference a lot of my calcs with the KQM guides. Jamie server clears. I mean, sure, but like, you're not gonna find Jamie's server unless you already know who Jamie is. Oh, what's up, Jamie? I think KQM got power cut by YouTube guide makers being able to make guides that can get 95% of the way there in the first few days rather than waiting months for a KQM guide pretty similar. That's fair. I mean, honestly though, KQM got power cut by the fact that Genshin guide makers started actually consulting theory crafters. What's the point of us writing guides for months for free when you can just make YouTube videos and stream for money? Yeah, true, actually. True and real. Let's be real, if KQM had a tier list like Pridwin that updates with every Abyss rotation, it'd be much more famous and talked about. That's true, but I don't know if anyone wants to fucking open that fucking Pandora's box. I gotta be honest. Like, no one really gives that much of a shit about the like Genshin.gg tier list or like the Game8 tier list, because they're not sources that people consider to be authorities, right? But if a source that's considered to be an authority actually had an actual tier list, that shit would like spark some fucking actual warfare.